Hey there, Frank, it's Bob, and today we're going to be continuing the sub-series where we compare and contrast all 6 tanks within the Battle for Azeroth beta. Last week we made our first video in this series, and don't forget the goal is a culmination of information dropping in a massive video, similar to what we did in the beginning of the Legion pre-patch. We really want to make sure that we have a firm knowledge pool on all the tanks though before we do something like that. So these are kind of a prelude to that, kind of giving my opinions and thoughts on where tanks are right now. And the reason we're making a second video on this especially is because some pretty big changes, a lot of things have actually happened on the beta recently. So we're going to talk about that. We'll go through all 6 tanks again. I'll tell you how my week and / weekend has been with all of these tanks. I think I have a lot to say, so let's get to it. Before I do, I just want to say one thing that I think a lot of people aren't aware of. On top of all the other class changes that happened, there was 2 major non-class related changes. That was one, war mode was nerfed to 10% experience. I feel like a lot of people don't know that. I'm surprised that more people aren't either complaining about it or talking about it. But frankly, I guess a lot of the people who might complain aren't actually going to do war mode anyway. So regardless, that kind of hurt my leveling this weekend, but the other big change, of course, was character copies. So as you see here, I have my actual Death Knight, and we're going to start with Death Knight. Of course, I have the 120 Death Knight that I've been playing the whole time as well. And we're going to start with DK because this is probably one of the most important things that I learned this weekend, and something that you guys really need to consider or think about a little bit more going forward with Blood DK especially. So the first thing was that if you guys didn't see the stream from yesterday, we saw a couple good Blood DKs in the LFR testing that we did. And, you know, besides that, you know, they had all different types of talents, so we weren't able to really learn anything about that. But besides that, what we did see was that Blood DK is very, very capable in raids. There's going to be a lot of, at least those, you know, first 3 encounters, there's a lot of strengths that Blood DK is going to have. A lot of magic damage for AMS, a lot of adds or things that can be gripped for, you know, the different grips that Blood DK has. And of course, the pushback on Mother, which is going to be extremely strong for, you know, the new ability that we got in BFA. So that's great. But the real thing that we need to talk about here is a buff to Icebound Fortitude, 10% buff, according to Wowhead. Now, I didn't actually, you know, check this out or care too much about it, but that's pretty nice. Nice little concession for Blood DK. And the major thing, of course, is that now that I've finally been able to transfer from my main DK, it's pretty obvious that the concerns everybody has had about the haste issue, whatever, quote unquote, the runic regen problem, everybody's saying Blood DK is still very strong, but it's very slow. And I pretty much put that to rest this week now that we finally have my actual Death Knight on there. It's playing exactly like it does on live, you know, minus the artifact, obviously. The runic regen is near identical. I don't see any difference whatsoever on 2 identical characters that are extremely well geared. Obviously, that's at 110. I'm eventually going to get to 120, and all that gear will be gone. I'll be, again, very, very low geared. I'll be on the early end of the gear spectrum, and of course, this will cause Blood DK to be, you know, haste-starved, whatever you want to call it. Their runic regeneration is going to be slow. The rotation might feel a bit slower. But I say firmly now at this point, you know, originally I was a little on the fence. I didn't know if this was something that they changed intentionally or if I was just, you know, feeding off the mentality of everyone else. But yeah, I'd say pretty comfortably that haste is the only reason that you might feel this way on the beta. You just need to get more gear. And, you know, we talked about this on the live stream. Unfortunately, we didn't start getting like 20 to 25% haste until well into Tomb. You know, like Nighthold was like around 15% for me, struggling to get near 20. I think I had 18 at max. And then once Tomb launched was when I finally broke over to the 25. And then now Antorus, whatever, 35 plus is where I'm at. So this is probably what you're going to have to expect in BFA as well. If for some reason you really dislike that, then I don't know what to tell you. But it's not an intentional change. It's just how gearing works. And I don't think there's any way to solve this outside of completely redesigning how runic regeneration operates. But anyway, Blood DK, didn't really play it much, but still, I think there's a lot of positives that came out of this weekend for me. So next up, we're going to go with Demon Hunter just because I basically didn't play it this weekend. I did 1 dungeon on it. It doesn't seem like it's any different. It's still very strong, like we talked about last time. They do a lot of damage, a lot of burst damage, thanks to some talents. Like I said, exactly since, you know, nothing changed at all since the last video we made on that. But they also appear to have been buffed in terms of Sigil of Flame damage, which, yeah, was one of the lower sources of damage from them in the past. So I guess I'm not necessarily surprised they buffed it, but it does seem kind of strange that they didn't actually adjust anything else. So the more I think about it, and after we discuss this, the more I think there might need to be a fresh approach on this, and that's why I want to talk about them here. I don't actually think they're overpowered. Now that we've discussed this, had a lengthy chat about it on live stream, I don't know if they're actually overpowered. Originally, I would have said that they do far too much damage and they mitigate far too much. But actually, I don't think they're that overpowered. So the damage situation, I think, might actually be intentional. With the threat changes, I think it's very important to have a tank that clearly does the most DPS. You know, it wasn't necessarily as important in the past, but that really affects the meta. If you have a tank, if all 6 tanks are doing equal damage, it might change how people approach the game. So not that I agree with it, but I wouldn't be surprised if they intentionally want a Demon Hunter tank to do the most damage of any tank. And it's like I said, it's not as wide of a margin as I might have originally considered now that I've played some of the other tanks more. All tanks can do very good damage, but Demon Hunter clearly is the top DPS. So still, we might see some nerfs, but in general, I think I think the Soul Bomb thing is intentional. The damage that it does is very high, and there must be some type of counterbalance to this that might eventually come. But the actual mitigation thing, which was what really convinced me, at least at the time, that there were gonna be big nerfs coming in the future, actually might not. I might have overlooked something very important. So other people brought up that most other active mitigations in the game are going to scale a certain way with stats and haste and mastery and all that, but they were claiming that Demon Hunter scales much lower, like the scaling ratio is much lower for all of these things. And I think it was outside, I think they said Agi is very good for Demon Hunter, but secondaries are going to be relatively weak. Now this, of course, is something I don't have any like acknowledgement of. I don't know, I don't do math, I'm not that kind of player. So if you guys know anything about that, let me know. If you've been playing Demon Hunter on the beta and you think that their defense might be very strong right now, but you think it will get gradually weaker over time with comparison to other tanks, that's the operative word, of course, comparing it to other tanks. And that's really when it dawned on me, because I was talking about it all weekend, and people were saying these things, and I started to realize, wait, Demon Hunter isn't actually that strong. It's just some of the other tanks are that weak. And then after doing it all in LFR, yeah, we kind of learned some things or two. So I think that's where we're at with Demon Hunter, okay? And next we're going to do Paladin. Paladin, I did an LFR yesterday, and we did some stuff out in the world. And frankly, I think Paladin is in a pretty poor spot right now. I think they're comfortably average. And again, you don't want to be average when you're tanking. You want to have something that you're really, really good at. And I'm not really sure what they're really good at. I've been talking about this for a while now, but basically if you combined Prot Warrior with Prot Paladin, I would be extremely satisfied. And that's because Prot Paladin's defensive and self-healing kit is actually really rewarding. I really like the self-heal. People complain about it being on the GCD, but I've lived with Blood DK for all these years, had no problem with that anyway. That doesn't matter to me whatsoever. I really like the fact that they have wings, very fun ability, especially with some of the talent synergy. And I really like how, their output situation comes a lot from Shield of the Righteous, which is now an AoE as well as a big defensive ability. And I think for the most part, Prot Paladin is very sturdy, very bulky, and they can do the job as a tank very well. Unfortunately, even though they have the burst CD, I just feel like their damage is relatively lacking. They do very good AoE damage, or at least multi-target damage, because Shield of the Righteous is of course off the GCD. That's probably the thing that attracted me the most to them. When I leveled it up, I was really satisfied with the fact that you can get so much damage within a one global burst, because you're effectively using 2 DPS abilities. And that's the same with Vengeance. I think that's a lot of why Vengeance is so strong right now, because a lot of their damage is coming through burst, and you're effectively able to get so much off within non-GCD targets, So yeah, it's going to be the same for Paladin, but unfortunately their utility is, I think it's the worst utility. I would be interested in hearing anybody compare it. I definitely, if I was to make the video that I'll eventually make right now, I definitely think Prot Paladin has the worst utility and overall flexibility for 5-mans. Like I said, they do good enough damage, tanking, reduction and healing are fine, but yeah, they just feel like they're missing something in a utility sense. I really wish they would give Paladin back either some type of aura or some type of buff. I really feel like they're missing something. I feel like most other classes have something that they definitely bring to the raid, we talk about Warrior in a second, Vengeance, Brewmaster. These things definitely bring something, but both Paladin and Bear, I think they really need their old buffs, their old blessings and Mark of the Wild, etc. back. So I don't think we're gonna get it, but that would be my choice. So anyway, that's Paladin. We're going to go to Warrior now, and Warrior was something that I had a very interesting relationship with this weekend. I was very hyped up on Warrior coming into this weekend. I'm very excited for it. I was going to continue leveling it. I leveled it on Wednesday. I'm pretty sure it was Wednesday. Got it to 118, was trying to get it to 120, but then character copies came. I wanted to start the Druid since I was finally able to transfer that. And I was extremely excited about what Warrior was doing in the play that I had discovered so far. Then I did LFR, okay? We did the bosses in LFR, and I honestly felt like a wet paper doll. Like, it was unbelievable. The boss was just having his way with me, and I think a lot of that is because I'm unskilled, frankly. I'm not even going to lie about it. I just, you know, I've not really played a warrior in many years. The last time I played a warrior really was MOP CMs trying to get the gear. That was a very long time ago, okay? So I don't really know if it's entirely my fault or not, but to me it feels like currently on the Battle for Azeroth beta, Warrior is taking the most damage passively out of all the tanks. And I wouldn't even say it's close. I would say without any question, they take an insurmountable amount of damage, to the fact that I was tanking Mother, right, doing the actual tank job. We had a Blood DK, he was doing the ads. I was dying to the melees. I wasn't getting hit by the mechanic, I wasn't getting hit by fire, whatever. I was just literally dying to the melees. In fact, I would charge in, and within the first 3 globals, I would be at like 10% health. I had to use last stand on the pull just to heal myself up. So that's scary. I don't really know what's happening there, but I think I've been told that they are buffing or at least redesigning block in some way, and I've said this for over 2 years now. Prot Paladin and Prot Warrior are always going to be weaker tanks for a lot of situations because they rely on a very antiquated and almost irrelevant way of mitigating damage, and that is block. If you ask me, block is completely garbage. They did make some changes already to the way shields and block have worked, and that's great. I'm glad that they're thinking about it. Hopefully after this next build or whenever it comes in, I think it's going to be a couple builds, hopefully it will change the approach that we have to block tanks, because as of right now, the mitigation that it has is very weak. I don't know. I'm not as high on Warrior anymore. I was really disappointed with how poorly they did in LFR, but perhaps it was more my fault. So the big weekends here were Bear and Brewmaster. We're going to talk about Bear first. This was easily a really eye-opening weekend and play session for Bear. Bear clearly is the weakest damage tank out of all of them, but something really interesting came to light this weekend, and thanks to the build on Thursday, we actually got a major, I think it was like a 30+% buff to Moonfire, one of the most favorable abilities that the Bear has, in my opinion. I've always loved the idea of it. That's why I like Lady and the Child so much. I really like the idea of a tank having a spammable dot that you could have on multiple targets. It's almost, it's like Blood DK's dot, but way better, and it does a lot more damage than Blood DK's dot. That is for sure, especially now after the buff to that. Also, Sunfire was buffed. Doesn't really affect, obviously, Bear, but it will affect Resto Druid regardless. I really had a good weekend with Druid. I absolutely enjoyed them. While I was leveling on Friday, having a blast, I did a bunch of dungeons, and lo and behold, Moonfire plus Brambles. So if you're doing any type of 5-man content, I would heavily suggest the talent that gives you the Brambles, whatever. I can't remember. I think that's what the name of it is, Brambles. It's basically a bunch of lashback damage, and it turns your bark skin into a offensive CD as well. This is insane. This is pretty much if Bear did nothing else good, I would say that is enough to make me interested. I really like this passive lashback damage that's coming from the tank model. It reminds me of the old days back in Classic when, like Warrior and Bear, or not Warrior, of course, Paladin and Bear, a lot of their threat and damage was coming from Ret Aura or Thorns, respectively. I really like the idea there, and you're kind of seeing it again with this setup here. I don't know if this is intentional. I don't know if Moonfire is going to stay this strong, but it is currently by far the top damage on any pack. And but on single target, especially on AoE, Brambles actually takes ahead, and together those two abilities, which are effectively not even rotational abilities. If you have Galactic Guardian, you literally don't even press Moonfire for a lot of like almost all of it is passive damage. Same with Brambles, you do very little interacting with it, and it was over 50% of my damage. I'm talking about at least 50 to 56% of my damage on any AoE situation. I like that. I like that. You know, some people may not. They might say, oh, Druid's very boring, whatever. I actually like that it's pretty simple and that a lot of its damage is going to come kind of passively. So I was pretty happy with that. But in LFR, we learned a very important lesson. Bear is simply a notch above most other tanks in terms of physical mitigation. Absolute studs. I literally never was in any danger, and when I was, my health pool felt very controllable thanks to the frenzied regeneration ability. Healing that up felt really comfortable, and it was the first character I did the LFR stuff on, so I was really pretty inexperienced on it, and I kind of wish that I had a chance to do it again, because once I had learned these fights, I think I would have absolutely dominated them on the bear. I actually had a pretty spirited discussion on the forums the other day with somebody who seemingly mains a bear, albeit not in 5-mans, but in raids at least. And he was pretty worried about, you know, the bear situation, and I'll still echo these concerns as well. Their utility is absolutely sad. It's probably slightly, well, it's definitely better than Paladin, just because you have Roar, which, you know, still exists even though Guttural Roars is gone, and you also, of course, still have Battle Res, which is always going to be important that a tank can bring that. But regardless, their utility and their offense is really way below average, and it needs to be looked at. But I do actually like the idea here that a lot of their offense is coming passively. I think that's pretty cool. But yeah, if you're looking for a sturdy tank, I'd say bear has to be, if not the top, it's up there. It's really good. It's really sturdy in terms of physical damage. Unfortunately, I don't really know what you got for magic damage, you know what I mean? It's not the greatest. But the one cool thing about bear is they have some of the coolest artifact or whatever Azerite traits. I think some of them are really cool. One of them is, let me think. Yeah, so whenever you use Thrash, you gain agility, stuff like that. Some offensive ones. There's actually one for Moonfire as well, which is obviously pretty cool based on the current changes to Moonfire. Yeah, I can't remember them all. But anyway, there's some really good ones. I would definitely recommend looking into them. I think bear is going to be high on my list for BFA for sure. And a surprise home run was hit this weekend by the Monk, all right? And it wasn't really hit this weekend. We soft served it up, and we're going to hit it soon because I played Monk in LFR, and it was semi-enjoyable. I know I don't like them in 5-mans, but I was kind of surprised at how much I enjoyed playing them in the raid. It was more enjoyable than I thought, like dealing with the stagger mechanic. But the real reason that we're hyped up on Brewmaster right now, guys, is because Guard is returning. Now, albeit it's not going to be like it was in MOP, it does interest me. That plus a couple other changes that you guys can check out in the Brewmaster thread where it was posted, talking about a new talent called Spitfire, reducing the breath of fire, whatever, like CD or something like that. And then I think they're changing the health pool, but increasing their magic stagger again, and I think it was something like increasing the rate of their orbs, or I'm not sure. Anyway, you could go read it up. I'm definitely not clued in too much on Brewmaster, but I do know this. I will definitely be playing them when that Guard and Spitfire talents are in. I'm actually really excited to see how that plays out. I definitely had no interest in Brewmaster coming into this week, and now after hearing that and getting some in on the LFR situation, it actually seemed pretty fun. So really, they were very. After I played Brewmaster, I was sure that Warrior was the worst tank because I had absolutely no problem staying alive as Brewmaster. Granted, we had a very good group when I did it. Oh, okay, see you later. We had a very good group when I did it as Brewmaster, but regardless, they still seem like they're always going to be the kings of physical, shrugging off that big hit, and that's a really big idea. But anyway, that's that. I'm really excited about tanks. I said this weekend, and I'm going to say it again. Usually, I don't have this much fun on a beta. I don't know, all these people, all these naysayers talking about BFA in such a negative light. I don't know what they're doing because I'm having so much fun. I've literally never had more fun in a beta. I've definitely never played a beta more. And the fact that I'm effectively going to be leveling up 6 tanks twice, that should sound like hell, but I'm actually really excited for it. So anyway, we'll see you guys during the week. Going to get back to live streaming. Tuesday we'll be on stuff on live again, but then we'll get back to beta stuff, and hopefully there'll be another build coming throughout the week. But anyway, thanks for watching. We'll see you guys in the next one.